Imagine running on a treadmill at full speed.
I mean, I'd rather not. But
Right. So you're sprinting. Now imagine someone is standing right next to you just shouting these incredibly complex math equations, and you have to solve them out loud.
yeah, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
But wait, it gets worse? Because simultaneously, you also have to successfully identify the subtle scent of, like, 5 different types of cheese flying past your face.
Okay, that is just chaotic.
It really is. But that intense, chaotic blend of, a physical burn and deep mental processing, that is exactly what a simple 20-minute walk feels like to a Cocker Spaniel.
Spot on.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're so glad you're here with us. Today, we are exploring a really fascinating stack of canine health data, and it's focused entirely on this one specific, deeply misunderstood breed.
Yeah, the Cocker Spaniel.
Exactly. And we're on a very specific mission for you today. We aren't just going to rattle off a list of cute dog facts. We're going to fundamentally redefine what the word exercise actually means for a sporting dog.
Because it's not what most people think.
Not at all. And we're going to look at how getting that definition right directly dictates their weight, their mental stability, and really their overall lifespan.
Yeah, and even if you never plan on owning a dog, the underlying psychology here is just universally fascinating, like how physical exertion pairs with mental stimulation.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you look at the health data, the most common question veterinarians and trainers get is seemingly straightforward. People just ask, how much exercise does a Cocker Spaniel need?
Right, they want a number.
Exactly. You would think the answer is a simple, tidy number, like, walk them 2 miles a day and you're good. But the data shows that's a really dangerous oversimplification.
It is, because you have to look at the biology and the history of what you're actually dealing with. You have to remember, we're talking about an animal built by generations of selective breeding to work a field for hours at a time.
They weren't bred to just sit on a couch.
No, they were engineered to use their nose, their cardiovascular system, and their brain all at the exact same time. They were built to locate, flush out, and return game.
So you can't just slap a pedometer on an animal with that kind of ancestral hardware and call it a day.
Exactly.
Right. So let's look at what a daily routine should actually look like, because there's this massive gap between our human expectation of exercise, which is basically just heart rate and sweat, right?
Yeah.
And a sporting dog's actual neurological needs.
It's a huge gap.
So the health data states that a healthy adult Cocker Spaniel needs about 45 to 60 minutes of, quote, real activity a day.
And if you have a working line dog, the demand is even higher.
Okay, but let's pause there for a second. What actually separates a working line dog from a standard one? Is it just like an attitude thing?
No, it's genetics. It's physiological wiring.
Yeah.
So a show-line Cocker Spaniel has been bred over decades, primarily for appearance.
Like the long, luxurious coat.
Right, the coat, the specific skeletal proportions you see at dog shows. So their prey drive and their endurance, they're somewhat dialed back.
Okay, that makes sense.
But a working line dog, they are bred strictly for performance in the field. They're usually a bit smaller, lighter, with a shorter coat. And their nervous system is just wired to be on constant high alert.
Like they're always ready to go.
Always. Their stamina and their desire to track scent are significantly more intense. So when the data says real activity, we are talking about satisfying that specific neurological drive.
Not just a stroll around the neighborhood.
Exactly. A leisurely walk around a suburban block where you just drag them along on a short, tight leash. It does almost nothing for them. Their legs are moving, sure, but their nervous system is completely starved.
Wow. And the canine health data reveals something that feels, I don't know, entirely counterintuitive to how humans work out.
Yeah, it really does.
It claims that a 20-minute walk where the dog is allowed to stop and investigate every single smell is dramatically more satisfying and exhausting than a brisk, uninterrupted 30-minute march.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, taking a hunting breed on a fast walk without letting them sniff, to me, it's like forcing a human to power walk through the Louvre Museum, but explicitly forbidding them from turning their head to look at any of the art.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. Like, sure, you might burn some calories, but you are going to leave that building incredibly frustrated.
What's fascinating here is the sheer computing power required for a dog to process those smells, which, explains that frustration perfectly.
Right.
We humans, we experience the world primarily through our eyes.
Right.
But dogs, especially sporting breeds, they experience it through their nose. To give you an idea of the biological difference, a dog's olfactory bulb,
That's the part of the brain for smell.
yes, the part dedicated to analyzing smells, It's roughly 40 times larger than ours, relative to total brain size.
40 times. That's insane.
They have hundreds of millions of scent receptors, compared to our 5 or 6 million. So when a Cocker Spaniel stops to sniff a tree, they aren't just smelling like dog.
What are they smelling?
They're actively analyzing who was there, how long ago they passed by, their health status, their stress levels, their gender. It is an incredibly intense data gathering process.
So if you deny them that process and just focus on physical distance,
You create a frustrated athlete. If a walk covers physical distance, but completely ignores their olfactory system, the dog will come home just as wound up as when they left,
even if they ran 2 miles.
even if they ran 2 miles. Because the part of their brain that actually needed to be satisfied, that ancient genetic need to track and analyze environmental data, it never got addressed.
So you fatigued their leg muscles, but their brain is still vibrating with unspent energy.
Exactly. For this breed, the physical exertion and the mental processing are scientifically inseparable. You cannot detach the two and expect a calm dog.
Which perfectly explains the classic complaint, right? I ran my dog for 3 miles and he's still pacing the living room.
Yes.
The owner is just dead on their feet and the dog is dropping a tennis ball on their lap like, what's next?
Is it my turn yet?
Yeah.
So if covering physical distance isn't the silver bullet, how does an owner actually deliver this deep mental engagement? Like, where does this happen?
Well, the clinical data highlights several highly practical methods to engage that mental drive. And scent-based games are incredibly effective.
Like what?
It can be as straightforward as taking a handful of their normal kibble and just scattering it in tall grass, forcing them to use their nose to find every single piece.
So you're forcing that olfactory bulb to light up.
You are. And retrieval games, like structured fetch, tap into that same historical drive. Then you have puzzle feeders, where the dog has to manipulate moving parts to get their food. And of course, basic obedience or trick training. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. The clinical research claims that just 10 minutes of working on a new training cue, like 10 minutes of intense mental focus, can genuinely tire a dog out just as much as physical running.
It really can.
I have to stop and push back on that, because how does just thinking hard for 10 minutes physically exhaust a dog? That feels like it violates the laws of thermodynamics, you know? If they are moving their legs, how on earth are they burning that much energy?
It sounds like magic, but I promise it is pure biology. The brain is the most energy-hungry organ in the body. In both humans and dogs, the brain runs almost exclusively on glucose.
Okay.
So when a dog is trying to learn a brand new command, say, you're teaching them to differentiate between the names of their toys, or asking them to hold a stay while you throw a ball, they are heavily engaging their prefrontal cortex.
They're having to actually focus.
Right. They're actively problem solving. They're controlling their physical impulses, analyzing your micro-expressions, and the rapid firing of neurons required to learn a new behavior demands a massive influx of glucose and oxygen from the bloodstream.
So the brain is literally stealing the body's fuel to process the puzzle.
Exactly. This metabolic burn physically depletes their overall energy reserves. So 10 minutes of intense cognitive strain genuinely creates a physiological state of fatigue.
That is wild.
It's an incredible tool for owners, particularly if you're, say, dealing with a blizzard and you can't safely go outside, or if the dog is on strict crate rest recovering from an orthopedic surgery.
Mental work isn't just a cute extra activity then.
No, it is a biologically legitimate substitute for physical running.
Wow. And that naturally brings us to the environment where all this takes place, because people usually assume that to own a sporting breed, you need 50 acres of rolling farmland.
Right, the big farm dream.
But the data explicitly states that Cocker Spaniels can thrive in small apartments. The square footage is completely irrelevant, provided the owner is deliberately providing that daily mental and physical engagement.
Absolutely.
But the dangerous flip side of this is what I'm calling the backyard fallacy.
Oh, the backyard fallacy. It is a massive hurdle in canine health. A lot of people upgrade to a house with a fenced-in yard and just assume the exercise problem is permanently solved.
Like, go play outside.
Yeah.
I feel like putting a dog alone in a fenced-in yard and expecting them to exercise themselves is exactly like a human buying an expensive, top-of-the-line treadmill, sticking it in their basement, and assuming they're suddenly going to drop 20 pounds.
Just by being near it.
Right. Just because the space or the equipment exists doesn't mean it will miraculously be used without deliberate intent and a structured program.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see exactly why the yard fails. Left to their own devices in a backyard, Almost every dog will perform the exact same passive routine.
What do they do?
They walk the perimeter, they sniff the fence line to check for neighbor dogs, they relieve themselves, and then they just lie down on the patio in the sun.
They aren't running wind sprints.
No, they don't run laps on their own. The yard is a fantastic bathroom and a nice spot for sunbathing, but it is not a substitute for actual engaged activity.
Because it lacks the mental piece.
Exactly. Activities like fetch, hide and seek, and particularly water play, which is phenomenal, by the way, because it taps directly into their historical retrieving purpose without putting impact stress on their joints. Those activities require your active participation.
So the environment is just the stage.
Yes.
It's the owner's active participation that acts as the catalyst. And if you understand that active participation and mental engagement are non-negotiable, we run into a biological reality, right?
Yeah.
The dog's physical hardware changes over time.
It changes drastically.
Because what works for a peak conditioned adult will absolutely shatter a puppy. And it's going to totally overwhelm a senior dog.
Right. The adaptation of exercise throughout the dog's life stages is critical. If we look at healthy adults in their prime, say between 2 and 7 years old, they're peak athletes.
They're ready for anything.
They make phenomenal hiking companions because a forest trail perfectly combines physical exertion with a highly stimulating, sensory-rich environment.
The ultimate safari.
Exactly. But even then, there are necessary precautions. You know, their long, pendulous ears and feathered coats, they act like brooms. They sweep up burrs, ticks, debris. So you have to monitor that.
Right.
And more importantly, you shouldn't push for extreme distances like a 10-mile trek, just for the sake of an arbitrary step count. And a vet should always evaluate their joints before you establish any rigorous routine.
Okay, but let's look at puppies. Because this is where a lot of well-meaning people cause permanent damage, right? The pediatric data is incredibly strict here. Absolutely no long structured walks and no repetitive high-impact activities for puppies. The reason given is their growth plates. Can you break down what a growth plate actually is and why a 2-mile jog on pavement is so destructive to it?
Yeah, so a growth plate is basically an area of soft, developing cartilage tissue. It's located at the end of the long bones in a puppy's legs.
Okay.
Because it hasn't calcified and hardened into solid bone yet, it is the weakest part of the entire skeleton. I mean, it's weaker even than the surrounding ligaments and tendons.
Wow.
So if you force a puppy to do repetitive high-impact movements, like jogging on concrete or repeatedly jumping off a high couch, the sheer physical force can crush or microfracture that soft cartilage.
And what happens if you do that?
If a growth plate is damaged, that bone might stop growing prematurely. Or it might grow at a deformed angle, which leads to lifelong, irreversible orthopedic issues.
That is terrifying.
It is,
Yeah.
which is why puppies need short, highly frequent bursts of self-directed play. They run, they tumble, and when they're tired, they stop and sleep.
They regulate themselves.
Right. Their exercise tolerance increases on a very gradual slope. There's no magic age like, turning exactly 1 year old, where a switch suddenly flips and their skeleton is invincible.
It's a slow process, and that need to adapt doesn't vanish, does it? It just reverses as they enter their senior years.
Exactly.
The data emphasizes that senior dogs still desperately need movement. If you just let them sleep all day, they lose muscle mass, their joints stiffen up, their cognitive health plummets. But the strategy has to shift back to those shorter, frequent outings rather than one long, exhausting hike.
Yeah, you're trying to maintain their mobility without sparking joint inflammation.
Okay, so here is a highly practical question for you, representing the listener who is trying to safely implement this. If a senior dog or even a prime adult can't vocalize their pain, how do you actually distinguish between a dog that is just happily fatigued after a good session and a dog that is secretly nursing an injury or joint pain?
That's a great question. It comes down to reading behavioral cues rather than making assumptions. Normal, healthy fatigue looks like a dog settling in comfortably, resting deeply, and waking up without any lingering stiffness later that evening or the next morning.
Okay, so they bounce back.
Right. Genuine discomfort, however, presents very specific red flags. You aren't just looking for an obvious limp.
What else are you looking for?
You're looking for a dog that hesitates before jumping onto the couch. Or maybe they bunny hop up the stairs instead of using alternating legs.
Oh, like taking both back legs up at the same time?
Exactly. You might see them rising very slowly from their bed, carefully shifting their weight, or you might notice a sudden, uncharacteristic drop in their enthusiasm to chase a ball they normally love.
So if they usually go crazy when you touch the leash, but today they just stare at you from their bed, You don't force it.
You don't force it.
And the medical data includes a massive caveat here, which is you never try to self-diagnose these changes. You don't just give them a human painkiller and hope for the best. You consult a veterinarian to figure out exactly what is inflamed.
Always. You never push through pain when it comes to canine joint health.
So if their joints are aging or we just have to drastically reduce their physical distance for any reason, we slam right into a massive biological wall.
The weight gain.
Yes. How do we stop this incredibly food-motivated breed from ballooning in weight? Because the Cocker Spaniel is notorious for using its big, sad eyes to beg for food, making obesity their absolute biggest enemy.
Is an absolute epidemic in the breed. Look, exercise and nutrition are not two isolated silos. They are two interconnected halves of the exact same metabolism equation.
Okay, explain that.
If a dog is receiving adequate, robust activity, that blend of physical movement and cognitive drain we've been unpacking, their metabolism can easily handle normal, healthy food portions. But the moment that activity level drops, if the owner doesn't drastically and strictly reduce the calorie intake, the weight packs on rapidly.
And the data provides a specific tool for owners to monitor this at home, right? The body condition score.
Oh, yes.
It's a quick 3-step physical check. First, you should be able to feel their ribs with just light pressure from your fingertips.
Light pressure being key.
Second, looking down at their back from above, they should have a clearly visible waist tapering in behind their ribs. And third, looking at them from the side, their abdomen should tuck upward toward their hind legs.
Exactly.
Why are we specifically looking at the ribs and the waist here?
Because of how this specific breed stores its fat. Unlike humans, who might store fat in various places, dogs tend to deposit visceral fat around their internal organs and along their rib cage first.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So by the time a Cocker Spaniel looks visibly chunky or round to the naked eye, they're often already clinically obese. Their thick coat hides that early weight gain perfectly.
So you really have to feel for it.
You do. If you have to push hard through a layer of padding to feel their ribs, or if that waistline has turned into a straight, solid tube, their joints and their heart are already under immense unnecessary strain.
Man. So what does this all mean? To me, doing that weekly body condition score isn't just an arbitrary measurement. It is exactly like balancing a checkbook where the currency is calories and energy expenditure.
That's a good way to look at it.
If the dog isn't spending enough currency through mental and physical strain, but you keep depositing the exact same amount of food into their bowl every day, your balance goes into the red, which in this biological case is dangerous weight gain.
Right.
It's a vital, quick diagnostic that forces you to adjust the budget before you go bankrupt.
And this raises an important question about how we view our daily routines with our pets.
Oh.
The canine health data identifies the single biggest mistake modern owners make.
Which is?
Relying entirely on a standard, boring leash walk and treating it like a chore on a to-do list. We think, walk the dog for 30 minutes, the exercise box is checked.
But it's not.
Not at all. If that walk lacked sniffing, problem-solving, and interaction, the equation is wildly unbalanced. You just have a physically exercised, chronically understimulated animal, and that dog is probably going to eat your baseboards out of sheer boredom.
Because they need a job.
Exactly. The entire philosophy we've uncovered today is that bodily movement and cognitive engagement are one singular biological need. Fulfilling both sides of that equation is what creates a calm, healthy, balanced companion.
Because at their core, this is a working animal. Their genetics are constantly looking for a version of their original purpose.
We need that fulfillment.
Right. And when we provide that outlet, whether it's through a puzzle toy, a scent game in the grass, or a carefully monitored hike, we give them the absolute key to their well-being.
Yeah, it changes their whole world.
And as a quick reminder to everyone listening, everything we've explored today is strictly for educational purposes to help you understand the biology of exercise. It is never a replacement for professional veterinary guidance.
Knowing the mechanics of their metabolism and nervous system empowers you, but your vet is the one who customizes it to your specific animal.
Absolutely. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how a dog's physical health and emotional stability rely completely on combining bodily movement with a deep sense of mental purpose and problem solving.
It's all connected.
So, what does that mean for us? Maybe human exercise feels like such a miserable, dreaded chore for so many of us because we are just walking mindlessly on treadmills and basements. We're completely ignoring our own human need for a sniffari.
Wow, that's so true.
Right. We ignore our own need for a mental purpose tied directly to our physical movement. The next time you work out, ask yourself, are you just moving your legs to burn a calorie, or are you actually engaging your brain? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.